After 3 years of a secret marriage, the chat history between me and my husband, Ethan, who works at a private airline, has been reduced to just 2 words. Every time he flew a night route, he would text, "Departing." Every time he touched down, he would text, "Landed." Not a single extra word. My heart's stomach ached every single time. Until 3 o'clock one morning, when his plane ran straight into a severe thunderstorm. I was on duty in the control tower, and through my headset, I heard him flirting with the new co-pilot, Maya. "Captain Vance, if we make it out of this alive, how about you take off on me next?" The headset went silent for 2 seconds before Ethan let out a low, teasing chuckle. "Sure. But don't be scared. I'll make sure we land safely." My fingers trembled on the console. Forcing down the panic, I kept my voice steady and guided them through the danger. The moment they landed safely, I headed straight to the airport transit hotel where he was staying. At the end of the dimly lit hallway, their shadows merged. I watched Ethan, usually so cold, disciplined, and restrained, lose complete control, acting like a plane spinning wildly off course. I let out a silent, bitter laugh. I had loved Ethan for 11 years. But falling out of love with him? It only took a single second. I didn't stay. I turned around and walked out of the hotel. The freezing 3 a.m. wind whipped against my neck, sending a chill straight through my chest. "Marcus, I want to apply for a transfer to the West Texas Desert Hub. I want to be an air traffic controller out there." The weather there was notoriously erratic, and the conditions were brutal. But it was far enough. Far enough that I would never have to wait for him to land again. Marcus Bennett, my manager, was shocked when he took my call. "Clara, are you sure you want to transfer now? Once you finish the emergency weather protocol you've been working on, you're guaranteed a promotion to deputy chief." I just gave a quiet hum of agreement. Marcus was one of the very few people at the airline who knew about my secret marriage to Ethan. He sounded bewildered. "Does Ethan know? I thought things were stable between you two." I didn't want to explain. "I just need a change of scenery," I said flatly. He didn't press further, only promising to fast-track the paperwork. When I got home, I kicked off my flats by the door. The tiny thud sounded deafening in the empty, silent house. I walked into the bathroom, feeling completely numb. Ethan and Maya's breathless, flirtatious banter kept echoing in my ears. Tears finally spilled over. I turned the faucet on all the way, using the rushing water to drown out my sobs. As dawn started to break, my phone finally buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Landed." I stared at those 6 letters for a long time. I remembered how, before we got married, he would send me long, excited voice notes the second he touched down, even if he was in a rush for post-flight inspections. He used to beg me not to call an Uber, insisting he would drive over to pick me up. But all that warmth had evaporated over the years. Now it was just a mechanical check-in. I texted back. "No need to update me anymore." He didn't reply. I flipped my phone face down on the table, dragged my suitcase out of the closet, and started packing. There wasn't much of me in this house anyway. The vintage airplane models he loved were bought by me. The expensive kettle I used to brew his stomach-soothing tea was bought by me. Even the motion sensor light in the hallway was installed by me, just so he wouldn't trip in the dark after a late-night flight. Looking back at our 3 years of secret marriage, Ethan barely spent any nights here. He was always busy with routes, training for upgrades, and leading the flight crew. I used to genuinely believe he was just overwhelmed with work. Now I realized the harsh truth. He wasn't busy. He just stopped caring once he had me. Halfway through packing, my WhatsApp work group buzzed with a new notification. I clicked it open. Last night's severe thunderstorm incident had been flagged as an exemplary safety response. A company-wide debrief meeting was scheduled for this afternoon. There were only 2 key speakers listed. Ethan Vance. Maya Sterling. My fingers froze. I scrolled down. My name wasn't there. But I was the air traffic controller on duty last night. I was the one tracking the radar echoes. I was the one who timed their go-around perfectly. I was the one who rerouted the approach sequence 3 times to guide them safely back. Yet, my name was entirely omitted from the debrief notice. A colleague texted in the WhatsApp group. "Captain Vance and Maya were incredible last night. I heard their coordination was textbook perfect." Others chimed in immediately. "For a rookie co-pilot, Maya handled that emergency like a pro." Yeah, the afternoon debrief is going to focus heavily on their seamless crew coordination. Swallowing the bitter lump in my throat, I expressionlessly packed my last sweater into the suitcase. Just then Marcus called again. "Clara, your transfer request has been officially approved. Also, you need to attend the debrief this afternoon. Even though operations didn't put you on the speaker list, you still need to be there for questioning as the on-duty controller." I gave a flat reply. "Understood." I walked over to the dining table, placed the signed divorce papers next to my keys, and walked out of that freezing house without looking back. That afternoon, the airline held the official debriefing. I was called in as the on-duty controller to provide background details. They sat me all the way in the back, against the wall. Meanwhile, Maya, representing the flight crew, took center stage at the presenter's podium. Ethan was seated close to her, casually flipping through his notes. Before Maya walked up, he reached out to straighten the water bottle she had accidentally nudged crooked. It was a small, incredibly intimate gesture. Standing in front of the projector, Maya confidently walked everyone through last night's emergency procedures. The room erupted in frequent applause. Then came the Q&A session. Suddenly, an anonymous message popped up on the internal meeting screen, questioning the authenticity of co-pilot Maya Sterling's core contribution to last night's emergency handling. The go-around recommendation, the wind shear window calculation, and the subsequent approach routing are identical to the direct instructions and weather logs of air traffic controller Clara Vance. Can co-pilot Sterling explain this? Is she stealing credit for someone else's work? Whispers immediately broke out across the room. Maya's face turned pale instantly. Her hand holding the clicker began to shake as she looked at Ethan with pooling eyes. Hearing the anonymous question, the heavy weight on my chest lifted slightly. I hadn't sent that message, nor had I planned to drag this drama into a public meeting, but seeing the truth laid bare felt like a breath of fresh air. Ethan looked across the room and locked eyes with me. His brow was furrowed, his eyes cold and accusation-filled. My heart plummeted again. Ethan stood up, walked to the podium, and took the microphone. His voice was perfectly steady. I'd like to address the anonymous question. Every critical decision during last night's emergency was led entirely by me. Maya followed my exact directives flawlessly. As captain, I can personally guarantee that her actions were beyond reproach. He paused, his gaze cutting through the crowd to land heavily on me. Clara Vance was the controller on duty. Her job was simply to follow standard protocol, managing traffic flow, maintaining separation, and relaying information. We all know that air traffic control merely supports the cockpit. They do not drive the decision-making. The room exploded into murmurs. People were whispering, and several turned their heads to stare at me. With just a few sentences, Ethan had completely erased my judgment, my split-second scheduling, and the immense risks I had taken to keep them alive. I suddenly remembered 7 years ago, the very first time I handled a heavy traffic night shift on my own. Ethan was still just a co-pilot back then. After he landed, he walked all the way to the tower to bring me a warm cup of coffee. He had looked at me and said, "Babe, it's your voice in my headset that brings me home safely." Back then, I thought he truly understood my worth. But now he dismissed me as mere support. Beside him, Maya's panic melted away. Ethan adjusted the mic for her, giving her a reassuring nod to continue. That look felt like a physical slap to my face. I stood up abruptly and started walking toward the stage. Ethan quickly intercepted me, grabbing my wrist so hard it hurt. "Let go," I gasped, my voice trembling with rage. He didn't let go. Instead, he gave a polite nod to the room. "Excuse us, we need to cross-check some operational details." Ignoring my struggles, he dragged me out of the conference room. The heavy doors slammed shut behind us. In the quiet hallway, I wrenched my arm free. My eyes burned. "Ethan, you completely minimized my work just to protect her. What am I to you?" His expression was dark. I thought he would offer an explanation, or at least spin one of his usual elegant lies. Instead, he suddenly stepped forward, leaned down, and kissed me. It was a short, icy kiss. No warmth, no comfort, and absolutely no apology. It was a mere transactional touch before he pulled back. I froze in utter shock. Ethan stared at me, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Is that enough, Clara? Stop making a scene." A wave of profound humiliation washed over me. Raising my hand, I slapped him across the face. His head snapped to the side. I aggressively wiped my mouth with my sleeve. "Ethan, you disgust me," I spat. Without waiting for a reaction, I turned to leave. But Maya suddenly ran out of the room, calling after me. "Clara, please come to our celebration dinner tonight," she called out, raising her voice on purpose. "I really want to thank you publicly for guiding us back. I don't want anyone thinking we stole your credit." Before I could speak, Ethan stepped close and whispered in my ear, "Clara, she's just a rookie. Cut her some slack. You're my wife. Help me out here. There's no need to sweat the small stuff." My chest tightened. "And what she said to you on the radio last night, was that also just a rookie being playful?" Ethan's brow furrowed deep. "Clara, don't be ridiculous. There is nothing going on between us. Don't ruin a young girl's reputation. You are a professional controller. Don't bring our marital issues into the workplace. It's highly unprofessional." I used to think that even if he didn't love me, he was at least a decent, responsible man. But his behavior today completely extinguished the last spark of affection I had for him. "I'll be at the dinner, Ethan. But I want a divorce." A flicker of shock crossed his face. "Clara, don't play around. You've been with me since you were 18. If you leave me, who else would want you?" I laughed, though there was no joy in it. Shoving past him coldly, I walked away. The celebration dinner was held at the upscale hotel across from the airline headquarters. Inside the private room, The atmosphere was lively, glasses clinking and toasts. Marcus Bennett, looking flushed and happy, beamed at his star captain and the new co-pilot. Ethan, you're rocksteady, and Maya is incredibly sharp. One makes perfect calls, and the other executes them flawlessly. You two make an exceptional team. And Ethan, you're not getting any younger. You should start thinking about your personal life. Maya might be a bit outspoken, but she's a wonderful girl. His matchmaking intentions couldn't have been more obvious. The few people at the table who knew about my marriage to Ethan went dead silent, casting nervous glances my way. Ethan remained silent for a few seconds before replying smoothly. Thanks, Marcus. But with the heavy flight schedules right now, I'm focusing strictly on work. The smile froze on Maya's face, turning her pale. Her eyes welled with tears as she abruptly pushed back her chair and bolted out of the room. Ethan watched her run out, frowned, and stood up to follow her. I quietly followed them out onto the hotel terrace. Maya had her back to me, her face buried in Ethan's chest. Why not, Ethan? I love you. I'll work hard to be worthy of you. Knowing colleagues were just inside, Ethan didn't wrap his arms around her. But his silent acceptance of her closeness spoke volumes. I remembered how, whenever I tried to get close to him at the office, he would subtly but firmly step back to maintain professional distance. Ethan gently pushed her back by the shoulders and whispered, You don't want people saying you only got promoted because of me. Let's get you credited for the winter weather protocol first. A cold dread seized me. My nails dug into my palms. What protocol? Ethan looked up and spotted me, his pupils contracting slightly. Just then my phone buzzed violently. I looked down. It was a message from a colleague. Clara, have you seen the new announcement on the company portal? Why is Maya Sterling listed as the lead author of the high-altitude weather dispatch protocol? Didn't you pull 3 consecutive all-nighters to write that? My heart sank. I opened the PDF on my phone, scrolling through page after page with trembling fingers. Every single line was my own writing. Even a specific typo in a technical acronym that I always made was left completely untouched. They hadn't changed a single word. I held up the glowing screen, my voice dangerously calm. What is the meaning of this? Ethan glanced at the screen, his tone casual. I let her put her name on it. She's junior and needs the leverage for the year-end evaluations. Once she gets more flight hours, we'll balance out your credits. I nearly laughed out loud from sheer rage. So, you stole my hard work to pave her career? You gave away my sleepless nights as a gift to her, without even asking me? Ethan remained defensive, deflecting the blame. It was a collaborative project. Maya helped organize the files, so putting her name on it is perfectly within procedure. The board makes the final decision, but as captain, I have recommendation rights. Your contribution will be recognized later. My voice shook. Recognized how? By putting my name in a tiny footnote at the end of the year, like you always do. He went quiet for a moment, then uttered words that chilled me to the bone. Clara, you transferred to this airline just to be close to me in the first place. These titles and credits don't actually matter to you. But they matter to Maya. She needs this resume to establish herself and climb the ladder. My ears rang. He knew. He had always known. He knew I stayed in this stressful tower job just to coordinate with his schedule, and he knew how much this promotion meant to me. He wasn't oblivious, he just didn't care. He treated my love, my sacrifice, and my patience as cheap currency he could spend on another woman. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath to steady myself. When I opened them, my mind was entirely made up. I'm warning you, Ethan. Stealing my intellectual property is a serious violation. If you go through with this, I will ruin both of you. Maya immediately put on her innocent act, raising her voice so everyone could hear. Clara, please don't be like this. If you really want your name on my protocol, I don't mind sharing the credit. Please don't fight with Ethan because of me. Her loud plea instantly drew a crowd near the terrace doors. People began whispering maliciously. Is Clara losing her mind over a promotion? She's just a basic controller, yet she's trying to steal credit from the flight crew. She should be fired. This is embarrassing for the airline. I stood there, marveling at the utter absurdity of it all. Ethan didn't stop Maya. He even played along, whispering gently to her. It's okay, Maya. Don't say any more. Marcus Bennett stepped up, his face dark with disapproval. Clara, if you have an issue with the authorship, file a formal complaint tomorrow. Stop making a fool of yourself in public. I looked at the judgmental faces of my colleagues. I smiled, slipping my phone into my pocket. Fine. You want me to follow procedure? Ethan's brow twitched. Sensing something was wrong, he reached out. Clara. I stepped back, dodging his hand, and walked away without another word. Ethan tried to follow, but Maya quickly grabbed his arm to hold him back. The next morning, I went straight to the ATC archives. I filed an official request to lock and seal last night's original radio transmissions, weather logs, and flight dispatch records. The archivist was taken aback, but processed the request. I signed the paperwork and kept my copy of the receipt. Then, I headed to the internal compliance office and handed over a flash drive. It contained the complete, time-stamped writing logs of the weather protocol exported directly from my computer. They thought they could simply erase my name and call my work their own. But data never lies. After that, I went to HR to sign my transfer approval. I handed in my building badge. By the time I walked out of the headquarters, the sun had already set. Standing by the curb, I blocked Ethan's number, his Snapchat, and his contact info on our internal messaging app. I locked my phone screen, gripped the handle of my suitcase, and walked into the night without a single regret. By the time the cabin doors of my flight closed and the plane began to taxi, Ethan, finally realizing the magnitude of what had happened, was desperately dialing my number. But all he got was the cold, robotic automated voice. "We're sorry, the number you are trying to reach is unavailable." Ethan stared at his phone, his brow furrowed as the busy tone buzzed in his ear. He hung up, slammed his foot on the gas, and drove straight back to our shared apartment. But when he pushed the door open, only pitch-black silence welcomed him. The motion sensor light in the hallway, the one I had lovingly installed for his late-night returns, remained dark. Annoyed, Ethan ripped off his tie and flipped on the overhead living room lights. The furniture was exactly as he had left it, but the warmth of my presence was entirely gone. "Clara." Silence stretched. No warm greeting, no dinner waiting. Nothing. He marched to the bedroom and yanked open the closet doors. It was completely empty. My clothes, my shoes, and even my suitcase from the corner were gone. Ethan's breathing turned heavy. He hurried back to the living room, where a neat stack of white paper under a glass caught his eye. With trembling hands, he picked up the papers. The bold title at the top read, "Divorce Agreement." He flipped frantically to the final page. In the bottom right corner was my signature, written in bold, decisive ink, without a hint of hesitation. Beside the papers lay my house keys, aligned perfectly. Ethan squeezed the paper so hard his knuckles turned white. He dialed my number again. Still blocked. He tried FaceTime, then Snapchat. Nothing went through. It finally sank in that he had been completely shut out of my life. Suppressing his rising panic, he tossed the papers back onto the table, refusing to believe I was actually gone for good. The following morning, the airline held its grand commendation and protocol launch event at headquarters. The conference hall was packed. Marcus Bennett sat at the head of the main table, wearing a proud grin. Maya, wearing professional makeup and an elegant dress, sat in the front row of the awardees section. Ethan sat right next to her. Despite looking exhausted, he maintained his poised, commanding captain's posture. Marcus picked up the microphone and loudly announced the official integration of the high-altitude weather dispatch protocol into the airline's standard operations. Just as Maya stood up to receive her award, the heavy double doors of the conference hall were thrown open. 3 senior investigators from the Federal Air Safety Compliance Department walked in, their faces grim. Ignoring the shocked gasps, they walked straight to the podium and inserted a flash drive into the master computer. Instantly, a detailed system log flashed onto the massive projection screen. Regarding this dispatch protocol, the Safety Compliance Department received a formal, non-anonymous report along with concrete back-end data. The lead investigator announced. His voice echoed through the mic. The system logs prove that every single byte of this protocol, from its creation to the final draft, was uploaded under the employee ID and IP address of Clara Vance. The room went dead silent. Every single eye in the room locked onto Maya. The smile froze on Maya's face, and her lips began to tremble uncontrollably. Ethan's expression hardened, and he stood up abruptly. "Investigator, there must be a mistake. The data collection was a collaborative team effort." The investigator shot him a cold look and clicked on the next file. It was the raw audio recording from the hotel terrace the night before. Their voices echoed with painful clarity throughout the hall. "You gave away my sleepless nights as a gift to her, without even asking me? It was a collaborative project. Putting her name on it is perfectly within procedure. If you go through with this, I will ruin both of you." When the audio finished playing, you could hear a pin drop. Marcus Bennett's proud smile was completely gone, replaced by shock and raw fury. Maya's knees buckled, and she slumped back into her chair, utterly defeated. Ethan stared at the screen, his tall frame swaying slightly. He finally realized that my final warning had not been an empty threat. The silence in the main conference hall of the airline headquarters was suffocating. The audio recording from the hotel terrace, relayed through the room's high-definition sound system, still rang in everyone's ears. "You gave away my sleepless nights as a gift to her, without even asking me? It was a collaborative project. Putting her name on it is perfectly within procedure." Maya sat frozen in her front row seat, her hands trembling so violently she dropped her leather notepad onto the floor. Her face, carefully painted with expensive makeup hours ago, was completely drained of color. Beside her, Ethan stood as stiff as an iron pillar. His uniform jacket bearing, for gold captain stripes on each sleeve, felt suddenly like a suit of lead. Co-pilot Maya Sterling, the lead federal investigator announced, his voice echoing off the acoustic panels. You are hereby ordered to surrender your flight badge and medical certificate immediately. You are under formal investigation by the Federal Air Safety Compliance Bureau for intellectual property theft, falsification of official safety documentation, and corporate fraud. 2 uniformed compliance officers stepped forward. Without a word, one of them pulled the silver pilot's wings directly off Maya's lapel. No, wait. Please, Maya shrieked, backing against her chair as tears streamed down her cheeks. She grabbed Ethan's sleeve frantically, her voice turning shrill and hysterical. Ethan, tell them. You recommended me. You told me it was okay. You said the captain has recommendation rights. Ethan turned his head slowly, looking down at her. The young, bright, innocent co-pilot he had protected, the girl he had treated like a delicate flower while stomping on his wife's blood and sweat, was now clawing at his uniform like a wild animal, eager to drag him into the fire to save herself. Ethan, say something. Maya wept, her fingers digging into his arm. It was his idea. He wrote the internal memo. I just signed what he gave me. Whispers erupted across the room like a swarm of hornets. Unbelievable. She turned on him in 5 seconds. He ruined his wife's career for this. Captain Vance stripped his own wife's name off a national safety protocol to impress an intern who doesn't even know standard procedure. Marcus Bennett, the airline director who had spent the last 2 weeks praising Maya and pushing for her promotion, shrank into his leather chair, his face a dark, terrifying shade of purple. He pulled out a handkerchief frantically, wiping sweat from his neck, utterly refusing to meet Ethan's eyes. Captain Ethan Vance, the lead investigator, continued, stepping up to the stage. Your command authority is suspended effective immediately. Your commercial pilot license is placed under administrative review pending a joint hearing with the Civil Aviation Administration. The officer reached out his hand. Hand over your flight logs and badge. Captain. Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed. He stared at the investigator's outstretched palm. For 11 years, flying had been his entire identity. He had prided himself on his ice-cold discipline, his precise landings, and his flawless reputation as the airline's youngest senior captain. He had treated Clara's quiet support as an afterthought, believing his talent alone kept him at the top of the tower. Slowly, with fingers that had lost all their steady grace, Ethan unclipped his gold-rimmed captain's badge and laid it on the podium. Beside him, Maya was led out of the hall by 2 officers, her hysterical sobs echoing down the long carpeted hallway until the heavy double doors swung shut. Ethan stood alone under the glaring stage lights. He pulled out his phone, his thumb tapping frantically on Clara's contact card. We're sorry, the number you are trying to reach is unavailable. He switched to his private email. He opened his messaging apps. He even checked the airline's internal dispatch portal. Her profile picture was gone. Her ID was marked transferred, departed. She hadn't just left his apartment. She had cleared her runway, cut off all communications, and vanished into the sky without leaving a single vector behind. 1,500 miles away, the sun rose over the high desert of West Texas. The landscape was vast, stark, and burnt amber, stretching out under a blinding, cloudless blue sky. Inside the radar approach control room at the West Texas Regional Air Hub, the atmosphere was chaotic, loud, and intense. The facility handled heavy oil field cargo transports, military training jets, and high-altitude cross-country overflights, all while battling brutal, unpredictable desert wind shear and sudden dust storms. Cargo 802, vector left heading 270, descent and maintain flight. Level 180. A clear, steady female voice resonated through the central tower speakers. Clara sat in front of the primary radar scope, wearing a black headset, her fingers moving across the control interface with smooth, effortless rhythm. Her dark hair was pulled back into a neat ponytail. Her skin, once pale and sickly from late-night shift work and emotional exhaustion, was now warm and healthy. Her eyes were bright, clear, and focused entirely on the glowing green blips on the screen. Beside her, Chief Controller Gabriel Thorne, a broad-shouldered veteran controller with silvered hair, set a steaming mug of black coffee on her console desk. Flawless sequence, Clara, Gabriel said, leaning over to check the approach separation numbers. You compressed 6 heavy freight jets into a 4-minute arrival window during 30-knot crosswinds. The boys in the pit are calling you the Ice Queen. Clara offered a faint, genuine smile, taking a small sip of the coffee. It's easy when the pilots actually listen to vectors instead of arguing over the radio. How are you settling into the desert? Gabriel asked, sitting on the edge of the adjacent console. It's a far cry from the air-conditioned executive towers back east. I love it, Clara said smoothly, glancing out the wide glass windows at the first open horizon. The air is clean. The skies are wide. And when a shift And it's actually over. It had been 3 weeks since she arrived in Texas. In those 3 weeks, she hadn't looked at an aviation news site once. She hadn't checked her old flight group chats. She spent her evenings reading on the porch of her small rented adobe house, watching the desert sunsets, sleeping 8 uninterrupted hours every night. Her mind was peaceful. Her heart was quiet. Suddenly, her console's secondary landline rang. Gabriel picked it up, listened for a moment, and his brow furrowed. He looked at Clara, his expression turning hesitant. Clara. It's the legal counsel from corporate headquarters back east. They're asking if you're willing to accept a private settlement regarding your intellectual property claim against Captain Vance and co-pilot Sterling. Clara didn't even pause her radar tracking. Tell them no. Gabriel nodded, speaking into the receiver. She said no. File the formal charges with the federal court. Good day. He hung up, leaning back. Your ex-husband is in deep trouble, isn't he? He's not my husband anymore, Clara replied, her voice as calm as a frozen lake. The divorce decree was finalized by default 2 days ago. Back east, the headquarters building was bathed in gray autumn rain. In the legal arbitration suite on the 10th floor, a formal disciplinary hearing was underway. Sitting at the long conference table were 5 board members of the airline, 2 federal aviation inspectors, and 3 corporate attorneys. On the left side sat Ethan Vance. He looked unrecognizable. In just 3 weeks, he had lost 15 pounds. His tailored suit hung loosely on his broad frame. His eyes were bloodshot and dark. Circles were carved deep beneath his cheekbones. His hair was messy, uncombed, and his hands trembled constantly whenever he held a pen. Beside him sat Maya Sterling and her father, a wealthy local contractor. Maya was weeping quietly, her head bowed, wearing simple clothes devoid of any designer labels. Across the table sat Clara's legal representative, attorney Sarah Miller, a formidable woman in her 50s who held a thick binder of evidence. Clara herself was absent. She had submitted an official waiver stating she had no interest in attending in person, delegating full authority to her legal team. Mr. Vance, Attorney Miller began, sliding a document across the polished wood. My client, Clara Vance, now legally Clara Scott, has declined your private financial settlement offer of $200,000. Ethan raised his head, his raspy voice trembling. Why? I signed the divorce papers. I gave her the apartment. I gave her all our liquid savings. Why won't she just talk to me for 5 minutes? Because your money is worthless to her, Mr. Vance, Attorney Miller stated flatly, and she has zero desire to hear your voice. Attorney Miller opened the thick binder, displaying a series of financial logs, bank statements, and utility bills spanning 3 years. For 36 months, Attorney Miller explained to the board, my client covered 70% of your shared household expenses using her private controller salary. She paid for the maintenance of your vehicle, your flight, training insurance supplements, and your private medical exams. While you were taking Miss Sterling to luxury steak dinners at Wilton's using company expense accounts, my client was eating instant noodles in the control tower during 12-hour night shifts. The board members looked at the documents, then shot Ethan looks of intense, absolute revulsion. Furthermore, Attorney Miller continued, turning a page, regarding the high-altitude weather dispatch protocol. The Federal Air Safety Board has officially recognized Clara Scott as the sole author. The protocol has been published nationally under her name alone. Maya let out a choked, pathetic sob, hiding her face in her hands. The chairman of the board slammed his gavel onto the table with a loud, echoey crack. Resolution of the board, the chairman announced, his voice cold as iron. Co-pilot Maya Sterling is permanently terminated from Saunders Airlines. Her flight records will be updated with a formal infraction for corporate fraud, effectively ending her commercial aviation career nationwide. Maya's father buried his face in his hands, groaning in despair, while Maya collapsed into her chair, sobbing hysterically. The chairman turned his gaze to Ethan. Captain Ethan Vance. For gross negligence in crew supervision, falsification of internal performance recommendations, and bringing severe disrepute upon this airline, your command rank is stripped permanently. You are demoted to second officer, restricted strictly to non-passenger cargo routes and barred from supervisory roles for 5 years. The chairman looked at Ethan with utter contempt. You had a world-class controller as your wife, Vance. You had a woman who guided your aircraft through hell for 3 years without asking for a dime of glory, and you traded her for an intern's flattering smile. You are a disgrace to those 4 gold stripes. The board members stood up and walked out of the room, leaving the legal files scattered across the table. Ethan sat alone in his chair. He picked up a small piece of paper that had fallen from Attorney Miller's binder, a copy of Clara's transfer receipt to the West Texas hub. At the bottom of the page, written in Clara's neat, elegant handwriting from 3 weeks ago, was a short note meant for her attorney. I don't want his money. I don't want his apology. Just give me my name back. Ethan pulled the paper to his chest, curled his tall frame over the table, and wept until his throat tore, his tears soaking the dry, white pages of his ruined life. 2 months later, the high desert of West Texas was experiencing its worst winter weather in a decade. A massive hubbub, a wall of blinding, dust-laden sand rising 5,000 feet into the air, had swept across the state, swallowing radar stations, blinding runways, and creating extreme, chaotic wind shear across 3 flight sectors. Inside the West Texas ATC tower, the atmosphere was at absolute fever pitch. Red warning lights flashed across the primary radar monitors. Wind gauges were screaming as gusts surpassed 55 knots. All regional departures are grounded. Chief Controller Gabriel yelled over the noise of alarm klaxons. We have 3 inbound flights trapped above the dust wall. Sector 4, what's your status? Clara sat at the primary approach console, her face completely calm, her headset clamped over her ears. Sector 4 is locked, Clara reported, her fingers flying over the trackball interface, guiding Delta 402 to the Northern Instrument Corridor. Altitude 4,000, maintaining 3-mile separation. Suddenly, a sharp, distorted emergency signal broke through the secondary frequency. Squawk 7700. The emergency indicator on Clara's screen flashed bright crimson near the eastern boundary of the sector. Mayday. Mayday. This is Cargo Flight 904. A panicked voice rasped through the static. We lost Engine 2 to sand ingestion. Severe wind shear at 3,000 feet. Zero visibility. We're losing altitude fast. Gabriel leaned over Clara's shoulder, looking at the radar vector. Cargo 904. That's an old Boeing freighter out of the eastern hub. Who's the pilot? Clara looked at the electronic flight strip popping onto her secondary screen. Aircraft. B737-400 freight. Captain R. Miller. Second officer/flying pilot. Evance. Clara's heart didn't skip a single beat. Her pulse remained perfectly steady at 70 beats per minute. Ethan was in the cockpit of a dying, single-engine freighter, caught in a blind desert sandstorm, losing altitude over a mountain ridge. Cargo 904, this is West Texas approach. Clara spoke into her mic, her voice smooth, ice-cold, and perfectly clear through the static. I have radar contact. Turn right heading 240. Vector for ILS runway 36 right. Inside the cockpit of Cargo 904, 200 miles an hour, enveloped in pitch-black dust and rattling violent turbulence, Ethan Vance froze. The alarm horns were blaring in his ears. The control yoke was vibrating violently against his palms as the left engine sputtered and died. The windshield was covered in dark brown silt. Through the static of his headset, that voice came through. The voice he had listened to for 11 years. The voice that had guided him through 60 thunderstorms. The voice he had called mere support 2 months ago. Clara? Ethan gasped, his voice trembling as he gripped the yoke with all his strength. Clara, is that you? Cargo 904, maintain professional radio discipline. Clara's voice cut through the static, completely devoid of emotion or personal recognition. Descent rate is excessive. Increase power on engine 1 immediately to maintain 300 feet per minute descent. You are 4 miles from the outer marker. Clara, please. Ethan wept into his oxygen mask, tears smearing against his visor as the plane dropped through severe downdrafts. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was blind. I lost everything, Clara. Cargo 904, correct your drift to the left. Clara responded instantly, her voice steady as a diamond. Heading 245. Wind shear alert at 200 feet. Do not stall. Beside him, the senior cargo captain yelled. Vance, keep your eyes on the artificial horizon. Follow her vectors. She's the best controller in the region. For 3 terrifying minutes, as the sandstorm battered the dying aircraft, Clara's voice was the only thread holding the plane to the earth. She didn't hesitate. She didn't falter. She calculated wind drift, altitude, loss, and runway alignment with terrifying, mathematical precision. Cargo 904, you are over the threshold, Clara commanded flatly. Cleared to land runway 36 right. Wind 320 at 45 knots. Thud. The heavy tires of Cargo 904 slammed onto the concrete runway, rubber burning through the dust. Reverse thrusters roaring as the aircraft slowed down, coming to a complete stop 50 yards before the end of the paved strip. Emergency fire trucks swarmed the plane, red lights flashing through the swirling sand. Inside the cockpit, Ethan collapsed against the yoke, sobbing uncontrollably. Into his hands. They were alive. And the woman who had saved his life hadn't used his name once. An hour later, the sandstorm began to clear, leaving a pale, golden sunset over The desert airfield. Ethan ran through the ground corridor of the ATC facility. His orange flight suit was covered in dust and grease. His face was stained with sweat and tears. He ignored the security guards at the base of the tower, scrambling up the metal spiral staircase, 3 steps at a time. Clara! Clara! He screamed, throwing open the heavy security doors of the lower tower lounge. He stopped. Clara was standing near the glass locker bays, wearing a clean dark coat, her leather bag over her shoulder. She had just finished her shift. Chief Controller Gabriel Thorne stood beside her, handing her an official envelope. When Ethan burst into the room, looking like a manic, broken ghost, Gabriel immediately stepped in front of Clara, his sharp eyes narrowing. Second Officer Vance, you are not authorized on the tower floor. Get out of the way. Ethan wept, his voice raspy and broken. He dropped to his knees on the tiled floor, sliding 3 feet across the room, stopping at Clara's boots. Clara! Ethan sobbed, reaching out his trembling, dirty hands trying to touch the hem of her coat, but not daring to lay a finger on her. Clara, you saved me. You brought me home again. He raised his bloodshot eyes, staring up at her with a look of pure, agonizing, infinite devastation. Look at me, Clara, please. I'm a second officer now. I don't fly passengers. I don't see Maya. I live in a tiny room near the freight. Thus, I sit by the radio every night listening to old tower tapes just to hear your voice. He pulled a small, worn object from his pocket, the motion sensor light from their old apartment hallway, the one she had installed for him 3 years ago. I kept it, Ethan cried, holding it up like a holy relic. I kept the light. Clara, I'll put it anywhere you want. I'll quit flying. I'll work as a ground mechanic. Just come home. Please, give me one more chance. Clara looked down at the man groveling on the floor. She looked at his dusty suit, his bloodshot eyes, his trembling hands, and the plastic sensor light he was clutching like a beggar holding an empty bowl. She searched her heart. She searched for the deep, agonizing pain she had felt at 3 in the morning, when she heard him flirt with Maya over the headset. She searched for the crushing humiliation she had felt when he erased her name from her own weather protocol. She searched for the 11 years of devotion she had poured into his cold, ungrateful life. There was nothing. The wound had healed so completely that not even a scar remained. Second Officer Vance, Clara spoke softly. Her voice was smooth, clear, and carried the quiet, majestic weight of the desert sky outside. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He looked up, a sudden blinding flash of hope flaring in his eyes. Clara, you owe your life today to the West Texas Regional Air Safety Protocol, Clara said, looking down at him with an expression as tranquil as a calm ocean. As a controller, it is my job to bring every aircraft down safely. I would have done the exact same thing for any pilot in the sky. She stepped sideways, effortlessly dodging his trembling hands. My shift is over, she added, handing a small document to Gabriel. And my work here is complete. Gabriel smiled warmly at her. Congratulations on your appointment, Chief Scott. Ethan froze. Appointment. Clara was appointed Deputy Director of Federal Air Traffic Management for the Western Division this morning, Gabriel announced, looking down at Ethan with cold, absolute pity. She leaves for the regional headquarters in Denver tomorrow. Ethan stared at her as if his brain had physically shattered. Deputy Director, the highest administrative rank in regional aviation, a position that oversaw every flight path, every tower, and every airline captain in 8 states. She hadn't just survived without him. She had climbed to heights he could never reach, leaving him behind in the dust of the runway. Clara walked toward the exit doors. She didn't look back. She didn't blink. She didn't offer a single word of hatred or closure. Clara. No. Clara. Look at me. Ethan shrieking, thrashing against the floor as security officers grabbed his arms, pinning him down to the tiles. Don't leave me in the dark. Clara. I love you. I've always loved you. His desperate, heartbreaking screams echoed off the glass walls of the tower, echoing until the heavy steel doors swung shut, sealing him into his own eternal silence. 18 months later, Denver, Colorado. The new Federal Air Management Complex sat atop a sunlit plateau overlooking the snow-capped Rocky Mountains. Inside the state-of-the-art master coordination room, dozens of high-definition screens displayed thousands of glowing flight tracks crisscrossing the continent. Clara stood behind the master director's desk, wearing a tailored navy suit with silver federal insignia on her lapel. Her hair was styled elegantly, her skin radiant, her eyes filled with a quiet, unshakable confidence. She was 31 years old, highly respected throughout the global aviation industry and completely at peace. Director Scott, her executive assistant, walked over, setting a tablet on her desk. The monthly regional safety audit for the freight carriers just came through. Clara took a sip of her hot tea. How are the numbers? All sectors are green, the assistant replied. Except for a minor incident in the Eastern Cargo Division. A second officer named Ethan Vance was permanently grounded yesterday after failing his mandatory psychological evaluation. His commercial license has been officially revoked. Clara didn't raise her eyes from her primary radar map. Understood. Proceed with the standard administrative filing. Yes, Director. As the assistant walked away, Clara looked out the grand floor-to-ceiling windows of her office. The sky above the Rockies was a vast, blinding expanse of clear, brilliant blue. High above the mountain peaks, a white jet contrail sliced cleanly through the atmosphere, flying high, fast, and unbroken toward an endless horizon. Clara smiled, held her teacup, and took a warm, peaceful sip under the clear, beautiful light.